The air was cold inside Station Z47, colder than usual. Kaelen Meyer muttered beneath his breath, rubbing his gloved hands together as he descended the narrow spine of the Deep Orbit Research Station. The station was silent, save for the hum of atmosphere regulators and the low mechanical clunk of his boots on the grated floor. He wasn't even supposed to be here. Routine systems diagnostic, his superior had told him. But Kaelen had worked for Arcandine Biotech long enough to know that routine never meant what it said. Especially when it came with top-tier override access and zero explanation. His tablet flickered. The access route ended here. A reinforced door, strange and out of place in this wing. It had no designation, no markings. Just a sleek biometric scanner. He raised an eyebrow and offered his palm. The scanner chirped. Green light. Door hissed open. Bullshit, Kaelen whispered. My clearance doesn't get me through trash compactor hatches. What lay beyond chilled him more than the air ever could. A chamber. Cold. Clean. Circular. A tube in the center, tall and clear, suspended in place by magnetic locks. Inside it, she stood like a flame frozen mid-motion. Orange fur, sleek and glowing faintly like a dying ember. Her body, humanoid, athletic, distinctly feminine, was restrained by dark cuffs at her wrists and ankles. Her face was strikingly human, but her long triangular ears and bushy tail told another story. Her eyes, golden and luminous, met his with such force that Kaelen stumbled backward. Open the door, the voice echoed in his mind. Not spoken. Planted. He gripped the railing, knuckles white. What the hell? They hurt me. The voice came again, more urgent. Every day. Please. Kaelen. His name. She knew his name. He didn't know what to do, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Kaelen's breath fogged up the glass, eyes locked with the creature, no, the woman, trapped inside the containment cylinder. His instincts screamed at him to back out slowly, file the report, and forget any of this ever happened. But the voice in his mind, calm, melodic, and undeniably sentient, wouldn't let him go. They keep me alive for what's in my blood, she whispered telepathically. But I am dying in pieces. He swallowed hard. You're speaking to me? I am projecting, she answered. My kind evolved to speak without words. We were hunted for it. She was watching him intently now, her long white hair rippling slightly in the recycled air. It didn't make sense. Arcandine's public record showed no experimentation with alien species, let alone sentient ones. There are indeed divisions specialized in bioengineering crops, atmospheric processors, and deep space medical tech. But Kaelen knew the undercurrent. Everyone did. Whispers about Project Kestrel. Black budget labs. Unregistered lifeforms. No proof. Just fear. He stepped closer. Her restraints were minimal, but the glass was unlike anything he'd seen. Active polymer layering, adaptive shielding, quantum sealed locks. The kind of tech you didn't use unless you were hiding something powerful. I'm not authorized to touch this panel, he muttered. But you can. The voice pulsed gently in his skull. Your genetic signature was pre-cleared. They made you come. Kaelen's stomach twisted. He'd been chosen? She shifted slowly, revealing more of her form. Her bodysuit, more like a shredded lab wrap, clung to her toned body in tatters. Not from struggle. From experimentation. Patches of her orange fur were burned or matted with synthetic gel. Her golden eyes shimmered. My name is Rivera, she said aloud this time. Her voice was hoarse, barely used, but strong. And I remember freedom. I want to remember it again. Kaelen stared at the console. 10 digits of encrypted input. Over a dozen warning lights. The door behind him wouldn't open without him triggering a lockout. If he walked away, this memory would die in his conscience. If he stayed. He reached for the console. Rivera's eyes didn't blink. I must be out of my goddamned mind, Kaelen said under his breath. But if they send me here to be the executioner, He tapped the override sequence. The panel flashed red, then green. With a hiss, the containment field began to lower. The chamber lights flickered as the seal disengaged. Steam hissed from hidden vents, a chemical smell filling the air as the vertical pod began to retract into the ceiling. Kaelen took an involuntary step back, heart thudding, instincts blaring. But he didn't stop the process. Rivera stepped forward. Her legs buckled, and Kaelen lunged instinctively, catching her before she hit the ground. Her body felt hot, feverishly so, and trembled with exhaustion. Even in her weakened state, she radiated a terrifying kind of strength. He could feel it beneath her skin, coiled and waiting. She looked up at him, breath shallow. "Thank you," she whispered. Kaelen was overwhelmed by her scent, like wild citrus and ozone, by the silky brush of her fur against his skin, by the sheer impossibility of what he'd just done. Alarms shattered the silence. Flashing red lights lit up the corridor behind them. A cold, computerized voice echoed through the chamber. "Security breach. Sector 47G. All personnel initiate containment protocol." Kaelen cursed, looping her arm around his shoulder and half carrying her toward the exit. "We don't have long," he said. "I can walk," she insisted, straightening her legs and blinking away the daze. Her balance was shaky but improving by the second. Her tail curled protectively around her legs as she moved beside him. "Where do we go?" he asked. "There's an access shaft above this corridor. Leads to a ventilation node. If we can reach it before the drones sweep this level." The sound of boots on metal rang from behind. Kaelen didn't think, he ran. He dragged Rivera through the hallway as proximity alarms escalated into shrill pulses. She kept pace, surprising him with her speed. Her movements became sharper, more fluid with every step. They ducked behind a storage hatch as a squad of black armored guards turned the corner, weapons raised. Kaelen's heart hammered as he held his breath. Rivera leaned in, her lips nearly brushing his ear. "If they catch me, they'll erase your memory. Maybe worse." Kaelen stared at her. "Then I guess we don't let them catch us." He flipped open a maintenance panel above them. "Boost me up." With surprising strength, Rivera lifted him toward the shaft's rim. He hoisted himself in, then reached back. She leapt nimbly into his arms, her fur brushing his cheek as she crawled in after him. Inside the shaft, everything was tighter, darker, filled with the distant groan of the station's inner mechanisms. Still, Kaelen felt oddly calm. Adrenaline? Or something else? He glanced back at the woman now crawling beside him. Her glow had dulled, but her presence hadn't. "Why are they so desperate to keep you?" he asked. Rivera's golden eyes caught the faint light of the shaft. "Because I wasn't supposed to survive." The air inside the shaft was heavy with static charge and metallic dust. Kaelen coughed softly, his shoulders scraping against the narrow crawlspace as they moved deeper into the station's service veins. Behind them, the muffled thud of boots and distant drone whirs marked the tightening net. "You weren't supposed to survive?" he asked again, whispering now. Rivera moved ahead of him, her tail swaying behind her like a flame in slow motion. "My species was eliminated," she said without turning. "Harvested down to the genome. I am what they built from the remains." Kaelen processed that in silence. "They made you?" "I was born," she corrected, a note of defiance in her voice. "But in their tanks. From strands of blood and memory scraped from extinction. I was meant to be a prototype, obedient, enhanced, reproducible. Instead." She turned to face him, golden eyes glowing in the low red light. "I remember too much." Kaelen swallowed. "From where?" "The DNA is just part of it. My kind, before the purge, we encoded memory chemically, spiritually, across bloodlines. When I awoke, I dreamed of things they hadn't programmed. Places that no longer exist. Names they never gave me." Kaelen could only stare. What kind of civilization had they destroyed to create her? She continued crawling forward, voice quieter now. "They tried to erase it. Pain protocols. Chemical reconditioning. Memory disruption fields. She paused, trembling. They failed. Kaelen's voice was rough. Why keep you at all? Because my blood contains traits they can't replicate, she said bitterly. Hyperadaptive immunity. Neuroarchitecture they don't understand. Even my temperature, look. She pressed his palm against the small of her back. Her body heat was intense, like touching stone warmed by the sun. I can survive in climates no other subject can. I heal fast. Think fast. And when I bond. She trailed off. When you bond? Kaelen prompted. It becomes dangerous. For them. They reached the shaft junction. Kaelen opened a panel and looked down into the cavernous maintenance core, pipes, coolant tanks, steam drifting up from cracks in the floor. A tightrope walk for anyone not used to it. But he had worked this system a year ago. He knew the way. They'll find us soon, he muttered. Rivera placed a hand on his shoulder, claws retracted, touch gentle. Then we go where they can't, she said. And when we stop running, we make them pay. Kaelen led the way down the shaft wall using magnetic gloves, boots clunking softly against metal as he climbed toward the lower reactor gantry. Below them, the maintenance core glowed faint blue, radiation shields still intact for now. If the alarms were still active, most of Arkandine's security would focus on sealing external docks and life support zones. They had minutes at best. Rivera dropped beside him, landing light on her feet despite her fatigue. Her glowing eyes scanned the catwalk. This is the central coolant bypass. Kaelen nodded. If we hit the venting valve, the sudden surge will flag a reactor anomaly. Protocol demands all security personnel relocate to the fusion ring. He pointed to a vent overhead. That's our window. She smirked slightly. A man with a plan. I like that. Kaelen set his tablet against the control panel and began splicing wires, overriding the access lock. I've rerouted this panel before. Should still respond to manual failsafes. Rivera leaned close, brushing her cheek against his shoulder as she scanned the schematic with him. He felt the warmth of her breath, faintly citrus, wild, and his hands hesitated for a moment longer than necessary. I wasn't lying earlier, she said, her voice soft. About bonding. It's not just biology. It's instinct. Kaelen glanced at her. You barely know me. Not true. Her golden gaze fixed on his. I knew the moment you opened the pod. You were the only one who hesitated. He looked away quickly, reconnecting the final relay. It's not heroism. I just didn't like what I saw. I didn't join Arkandine to torture people. You didn't join them to save me either, she said gently. No, he admitted. But I'm not leaving you. Her tail curled slightly around his leg, subtle, unconscious. It sent a jolt of something through him. The console flashed green. The coolant line shuddered, then groaned. Below them, emergency valves burst open with a blast of frigid mist. Sirens flared red. A female AI voice rang out. Core coolant spike detected. Reactor 3 venting initiated. Security teams reroute to Sector R9. Kaelen grabbed Rivera's hand. Now! They bolted across the catwalk, steam rising around them as the gantry lights flickered. He guided her toward a narrow ladder that led into a disused hydroponics line, abandoned for months due to mold. No one would patrol it. Behind them, footsteps thundered far above. Voices barked and clipped commands. As they ducked into the dark shaft, Rivera pulled the grate shut behind them and whispered. You were right. Kaelen turned. About what? She smiled faintly in the dark. You are not a hero. But you are exactly who I needed. The hydroponics shaft was stale and damp, thick with the smell of decay and rust. Bioluminescent moss glowed faintly along the curved walls, leftovers from the abandoned terraforming tests that had once made this level an artificial Eden. Now, it was deathly quiet. Rivera moved ahead of Kaelen, her orange fur dim in the green-blue shadows. She touched one of the moss clusters gently, and it brightened beneath her fingertips. These organisms respond to sentient energy. she said softly. Kaelen gave her a sideways look. You make it sound like they're alive. They are, she said. In a way your science hasn't learned to measure. He crouched beside a warped irrigation pipe and set his tablet to scan for uplinks. We're safe for now, he muttered. This whole section's disconnected from the main grid. We'll get maybe 20 minutes before they start sweeping the blind zones. Rivera didn't answer. She had stopped in the middle of the corridor, her hand resting on a broken nutrient tank. Her breathing was shallow, her ears tilted downward. Hey! Kaelen stood up. What's wrong? She blinked slowly. This place smells like my cradle room. Kaelen froze. I was raised in a chamber like this, she said, voice distant. Artificial warmth. Cloned soil. The same recycled oxygen. But no sky. No wind. No stars. She looked up, eyes wet. I've never seen stars, Kaelen. He stepped toward her, unsure of what to say. You will. She laughed, bitter, tired. They taught me equations. Combat. Compliance. But they never let me see a sunrise. I don't even know if I can breathe outside. Kaelen touched her shoulder. You'll get that chance. You're not property. Not anymore. She turned toward him slowly, her tail curling behind her legs. You keep saying things like that. Like I'm free. Like I belong to myself again. You do. No, she said quietly. I belong to this moment. And to you. You're the first thing I've chosen. He didn't respond, not with words. Instead, he reached out and gently brushed his fingers down her arm. Her fur rose slightly under his touch, and her ears twitched, alert but not afraid. The silence stretched. Then her voice returned, softer. If we don't make it off this station, I want to remember what it felt like to be wanted. Kaelen stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. You're not going to die here. A moment passed. And then she kissed him. It was slow and electric, her lips warmer than they should have been, her claws barely grazing his neck. When they pulled apart, her golden eyes glowed like firelight. I think I understand what bonding means now, he said hoarsely. Rivera gave a sly smile. Then let's survive long enough to make it permanent. Kaelen and Rivera moved deeper into the abandoned gardens, weaving through overgrown nutrient arches and twisted vines. The path was erratic, old scaffolding jutted through the ceilings, hydrofog condensers dripped rust-stained water, and the smell of wet metal clung to the air. Despite the shadows, Rivera's pace was steady. We're near a subsurface crawl, Kaelen whispered, wiping grime from his tablet. If we access the freight tunnel behind Storage Vault 9A, it leads straight to the old cargo dock. Still active? Kaelen nodded. Was decommissioned years ago but never locked down properly. I helped rewire its dehumidifiers during a resource salvage trial. There's a drone maintenance platform there, small, fast, and unregistered. If we're lucky, the fuel cells are intact. Rivera placed a hand on his back. Then we're leaving tonight. They reached a broken archway, twisted metal and dangling hydroponic cables, when the silence snapped. A sharp, mechanical chirp echoed from the far end of the corridor. Kaelen spun. Shit! Patrol drones? Rivera asked, ears flicking back. No. Kaelen's voice tightened. Stalkers. 3 red lights blinked through the green mist. They moved low to the ground, quadrupedal, liquid smooth motion, disturbingly quiet despite their speed. No Arcandine emblem, no ID tags. Just sleek black shells and gleaming sensory lenses. Rivera froze. They're not drones. They're bi-trackers. Made from cloned cortical tissue. They can smell adrenaline. Kaelen's hand slid down to the metal tool strapped to his thigh, a reinforced spanner, the closest thing he had to a weapon. Back, Rivera whispered, grabbing his wrist. I'll distract them. You get to the shaft. No, he growled. We stay together. They'll target me, she argued. They're designed to prioritize genetic assets. She stepped forward. Claws extended. The bi-trackers hissed, their legs angling like a mantis. A targeting beam skimmed her torso. Kaelen's panic flared. He bolted into motion, hurling a broken metal pipe across the hallway. The sound was deafening, enough to draw the creature's gaze. "Now!" he shouted. They ran. One of the biotrackers lunged, slamming into Kaelen's shoulder and sending him crashing through a dead plant bed. Rivera turned with a snarl, claws slashing the thing's sensor pod. Sparks burst, and the stalker shrieked in a digital screech before flailing away. Kaelen pulled himself upright, panting. What the hell happened to research ethics? They were rebranded as Innovation Flexibility. Rivera spat, helping him limp forward. As they ducked through a narrow vent shaft, the last sound they heard was the wounded tracker dragging itself toward the hydro line, its mangled form whispering through the dark like a promise. "They won't stop," Kaelen said, wiping blood from his lip. "No," Rivera agreed. "But neither will we." Kaelen's legs ached by the time they emerged from the vent shaft, dust coating his jacket and blood from the tracker scrapes soaking into the sleeve. He winced, but Rivera didn't let him slow. She gripped his wrist, guiding him down a sloped access ramp into the old cargo wing. The air was thicker here, stale, untouched by ventilation. Overhead lights flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows through the abandoned loading zone. Cargo crates were stacked haphazardly, some rusted shut, others broken open and picked clean. "It looks like a tomb," Kaelen muttered. "Good," Rivera said. "Tombs make poor hunting grounds." He led her behind an old coolant tank and knelt by a concealed maintenance grate. With some effort, he pried it loose and reached into the cavity. His hand closed around the cold metal of an old access card. "Still here," he whispered. "One-time code. Won't be traceable." Rivera's ears twitched. "Something's wrong." He looked up. "What?" She turned her head slightly. "No sound. Not even echo. Too empty." Kaelen hesitated, then scanned the walls. "Station shielding here is layered, anti-magnetic. Interferes with standard audio pickups. No cams either." "Then they'll check it manually soon," she said. "We need to move." They crossed the docking floor in silence. Kaelen slid the card through a rusted terminal, and the panel buzzed reluctantly to life. A shuttered hangar bay groaned as it opened just wide enough to admit a man and a Vulpine woman. Inside sat the drone platform. It was small, designed for remote external repairs. 2 seats, barely armored, not space-rated beyond a planetary moon hop. But it had thruster integrity and solar glide fins. Just enough. Kaelen started the boot sequence. Power cells flickered green. "We're in luck." Rivera rested her hand on the hull, eyes scanning its exposed wiring and cracked vent nozzles. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Kaelen smiled. "You've been trapped in a lab too long if you think this junk heap counts as beautiful." She looked at him. "It doesn't matter how it looks. It's a door. To the stars." For a beat, they stood in silence. Then a loud metal clang echoed behind them. Kaelen turned, heart seizing. The hatch they'd come through slammed shut. A hydraulic lock engaged. Then came the sound of metal scraping, slow, deliberate, like claws dragged across steel. A voice rang out, amplified but cold. "Specimen 17. Return now and you may still qualify for project reintegration." Rivera's fur bristled. "Director Salvek," she whispered, voice low and full of venom. "He was there the day I woke. The one who named me a contingent asset." Kaelen's knuckles whitened on the throttle. "Then we make sure he never touches you again." The lights cut out. From the far corner of the dock, something large and breathing entered the bay. The thing that stepped into the hangar didn't walk, it glided. A fusion of machine and flesh, it was 3 meters tall, plated with segmented armor that shimmered like wet oil. Its movements were smooth, deliberate, as if every step was rehearsed for maximum fear. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth, curved metal plate, faintly reflective. Kaelen could see his own distorted silhouette in it, small, mortal, outmatched. Arcandine's last resort, Rivera breathed. A null-class hybrid. Kaelen pulled her behind the drone craft as the creature sniffed the air with no visible nose. Beneath the layers of artificial tissue and bioala, it had once been alive. Human, maybe? But not anymore. You said you knew Salvek? Kaelen whispered. He built that thing. Rivera nodded, eyes locked on the beast. Salvek pioneered neurografting. He needed a loyal enforcer. Something with instincts and programmable aggression. So, a pet assassin. A pet with my genome, she added bitterly. That thing was built to track and contain me. Its neural profile mirrors mine. The creature let out a low, mechanical snarl. Its head cocked slightly, like a predator testing a scent. Kaelen didn't wait for it to close the gap. He slammed a release panel, and the drone's side engine flared to life, flooding the bay with heat and noise. The null hybrid staggered back, shielding its face. Rivera darted to the side, moving so fast she was a blur of orange and white. Kaelen climbed onto the loading ramp and triggered the startup cycle. The drone buzzed, resisting, systems sluggish after years of neglect. Specimen 17. The voice boomed again, this time not over speakers but from the creature itself, its voice box modulated to Salvek's tone. Stop running. You were not built for freedom. Kaelen roared back. She wasn't built. She was born. He grabbed the tool wrench from his belt and threw it with all his strength. The wrench smashed into the null's left shoulder plate, staggering it again. Rivera used the moment to leap atop the crates, launching herself in a corkscrew spin that ended with her heels slamming into the hybrid's neck. Sparks burst. It howled, a sound far too human. Kaelen slammed his hand on the launch switch. Rivera! Now! She landed beside him, panting, eyes blazing. Hit it! The drone's magnetic clamps released. With a screech, it hovered an inch off the floor, then lurched forward, skimming just over the hybrid's clawed hand as it swiped at them. A final snarl. A promise of return. Then they were gone, sailing through the half-open dock doors into the hollow silence of space. Kaelen gripped the side rail, adrenaline pounding. Please tell me you've flown one of these before. Rivera smirked. No. But I learned fast. The drone spun, reoriented, and punched into the black. Behind them, the station shrank into a smear of light. Ahead, the stars waited. The stars outside the viewport looked sharper than Kaelen remembered. Not just brighter, but closer, almost too close, as if the vacuum itself were alive and watching. The drone shuttle bucked slightly as Rivera wrestled with the outdated controls, her fur glowing dim orange in the cabin's flickering console light. She wasn't trained to fly, but her reflexes were instinctive, fluid, precise. Like she had been born to ride the edge between escape and annihilation. We're leaking compression from the rear stabilizer, Kaelen said, frowning at the diagnostics. Portside thrusters cracked too, just holding together on residual ion charge. Will it last? Long enough to reach the orbital graveyard. Rivera glanced at him, one ear tilted in curiosity. Graveyard? Old satellite field. Discarded tech and junkers orbiting a dead moon. Arcandine stopped cleaning it years ago. No one monitors it anymore. Too dangerous. A crooked smile touched her lips. Perfect. They veered starward, slipping into the fractured debris ring that looped around the moon like a shattered halo. Bent antennae and rusted solar wings drifted alongside broken pods and silent drones. It was a graveyard indeed, and for now, a perfect hiding place. Kaelen guided the shuttle between two derelict cargo husks and throttled down the reactor core. Lights dimmed. Life support kicked to emergency reserve. They drifted. In the silence, Kaelen turned to her. You all right? Rivera sat cross-legged on the floor, arms resting on her knees. Her tail curled beside her, twitching faintly. I'm tired. He nodded. Settling beside her. You should sleep. I don't sleep like humans do, she murmured. We enter phases. Light trance. Deep coil. Shared state dreaming if bonded. Shared what now? She tilted her head. You want the science? Not particularly. She smiled, genuinely this time, not out of fire or defiance, but something softer. Then just know this: when I sleep near someone I trust, I don't have nightmares. He said nothing, just reached over and gently took her hand. It was hot, like warm stone beneath desert sun. But it steadied his pulse. I've never trusted anyone this quickly before, she whispered. And I've never been this afraid of losing them. Kaelen exhaled. You're not going to lose me. She leaned into his side, resting her head against his shoulder. If we make it to Federation space, what happens next? We find Nexus Station, he replied. It's off-grid, hard to trace. Refugees. Whistleblowers. People like us. They'll help us get the evidence out. You think the galaxy cares? I think the galaxy pretends not to, until someone forces it to look. She closed her eyes. Then let's be the ones who force it. And for the first time in either of their lives, they allowed themselves to hope. Rivera stirred first. The starlight had shifted, subtle, but enough to wake her. Her ears flicked, listening not for sound, but for vibration. Energy fields. Pulse echoes. Instinct more than training. Kaelen was still asleep, slumped awkwardly against the wall, tablet in his lap, one arm stretched across where she had been curled beside him. His breathing was slow. Steady. But something was wrong. She rose silently and moved to the navigation console. The system was on low power, screen flickering with static. She adjusted the sensor sweep manually, brushing aside corrupted data to isolate a strange distortion on the edge of the orbital graveyard. A ripple. Subtle, cold, and artificial. Kaelen, she whispered, placing a hand on his arm. He blinked awake immediately. We've got movement, she said. Slow. Cloaked. About 20 degrees off our drift path. Kaelen was fully alert now, rubbing his eyes. How close? Close enough that I can smell its field generator. Kaelen moved to the console and overlaid a heat map. A faint signature, just one, flickered like a heartbeat on the screen. It's shadow tracking us. They've sent a reclaimer, Rivera said, voice tightening. Special ops. Not fast, but patient. Meant to retrieve, not destroy. They still think you're an asset. He spat the word like poison. She stared at the screen, thinking. We need to make them think we're someone else, she said. Scatter trail. Corrupt telemetry. You're not just guessing, are you? She smiled faintly. I watched every recovery tactic they programmed into my cell. And I remember them all. Kaelen got to work. He pulled a hollowed relay chip from their toolkit and began pulsing false engine patterns, bouncing signals off drifting debris to make it appear they'd already exited the graveyard. Rivera helped him time the power surges. Within minutes, the shadow signal blinked, paused, then turned away. It's working, Kaelen whispered. For now, Rivera replied, leaning back. But we have maybe 12 hours before Arcandine updates their tactical models. After that, deception won't be enough. Kaelen leaned over the console. Then we jump before they catch up. I know a transit point. Scrapyard relay on the edge of Deura Belt. Might be able to buy a ride to Nexus if we barter with intel. Think they'll trust us? They'll trust the proof I stole. He tapped his tablet, displaying compressed data packets, surveillance logs, experiment reports, genetic blueprints labeled Subject 17, phase integration failures. Rivera's file. She stared at the screen, jaw tense. So much of me, catalogued like a machine, she said. Vitals. Neural density. Hormone spike reactions. And none of it says what I really am. Kaelen placed a hand over hers. Then let's give them a reason to rewrite the record. Outside the window, the stars held their breath. 12 hours later, the stars warped. Kaelen gritted his teeth as the jury-rigged jump drive sputtered to life. The drone shuttle's underbelly glowing a faint sickly green. It wasn't a true FTL engine, just a grav-pinch skip node. One leap. One chance. and only if their timing with the derelict scrapyard gate was precise. Rivera held on to the control rail beside him, her tail wrapped tightly around her thigh. Field distortion at 30%. Stabilizing, barely. He wiped sweat from his brow. Fusion coils venting plasma through a cracked intake. If we overshoot the vector, we'll scatter into atoms. Rivera nodded. Then let's not overshoot. They counted down together. 3. The ship shook. Red lights pulsed. The external stabilizers whined as the debris field around them warped under the growing grav crunch. 2. Kaelen reached over and laced his fingers with Rivera's. Just once. Just to feel it. 1. The ship surged forward with a sickening lurch. Stars stretched, blurred, then collapsed into a tunnel of light. The shuttle screamed, a metallic roar that wasn't quite mechanical. For a moment Kaelen felt his own heartbeat stagger, stretched too thin, too fast. And then... silence. Dead silence. Outside the cracked viewport, they drifted above a planetless red dwarf, surrounded by a scrapyard of forgotten ships. Satellite husks, hollow freighters, engines sealed with vines and solar rot. At the center of the mess, an old relay beacon blinking a code so ancient it barely registered. Deura Belt's forgotten gate, Kaelen breathed. Rivera stared, eyes narrowed. I smell copper. Ozone. Human life, mixed with fear. He frowned. Then someone's already here. A message crackled through the ancient beacon. Static first. Then words. Identify or divert. Private salvage operation in progress. Trespassers will be fired upon. Kaelen answered quickly. Not a trespasser. Name's Kaelen Meyer. I'm carrying whistleblower-grade evidence against Arcandine Biotech. We're trying to reach Nexus. A long pause. Rivera's ears twitched, listening beyond the signal. Another voice came on. Female. Harsh. Meyer? You're the technician they listed dead after reactor blackout 17A? Kaelen blinked. Yeah. I was there. And I survived. Another pause. Then the voice replied with new weight. Docking Corridor 9. You've got 5 minutes. If you're lying, we'll throw you out the airlock. Kaelen looked at Rivera. She gave a small smile. Well, at least we're not boring. The docking corridor was a narrow tunnel of mismatched alloy plates and salvage scaffolding, barely sealed against vacuum. The airlock hissed open with a reluctant groan, and Kaelen and Rivera stepped into what could only be described as organized chaos. Inside, the station was a labyrinth of retrofitted bulkheads, flickering lights, and improvised habitation zones. Weld marks scorched the walls. Power cables dangled like vines. Somewhere, a generator thumped rhythmically like a distant heartbeat. A human woman approached. Late 30s, skin sun-worn and scarred, wearing ex-military armor rebranded with yellow hazard paint. Her hair was buzzed short, one eye replaced with a scanner lens. Her voice was hard. You're Meyer? Kaelen nodded. That's right. She pointed to Rivera, whose fur bristled at the motion. And her? I'm Rivera, she answered coolly. Not cargo. Not salvage. Not your problem. The woman raised an eyebrow. Feisty. Good. Nexus likes people who bite back. Another figure stepped forward, taller, non-human. Forearms, crystalline skin with opalescent shimmer, eyes like layered mirrors. Its voice buzzed faintly, melodic and strange. The organic has traces of biological modifications, but no mechanical implants. Species unknown. Yeah, the woman said. You don't show up on any charts, fur girl. I'm the reason Arcandine's sending reclaimers to ghost space, Rivera replied. The crystalline figure tilted its head. Then you are either extremely valuable, or extremely dangerous. Kaelen stepped between them. Both. Which is why we're here. The woman gestured. Fine. We'll take you to intake. But if you lie, if you bring trackers to my door, or if you so much as twitch wrong near the generators, I will vent you myself. Kaelen met her gaze. Understood. They were led through the winding station, past traders haggling over power cells, scavengers welding new limbs onto old exosuits, and children chasing each other with salvaged helmets on their heads. A city built from the scraps of the forgotten. Rivera leaned close. This place is alive. Kaelen nodded. And hiding in plain sight. Their escort stopped before a heavy vault door. Inside is the council. Don't posture. Don't threaten. Don't lie. Rivera met her stare. I don't lie. I just don't always tell the whole truth. The vault opened, steam hissing. Kaelen and Rivera stepped into a chamber filled with faces, human and alien, worn but watchful. A place where survival meant everything, and trust was currency rarer than gold. Behind them, the vault sealed shut. And the interrogation began. Kaelen and Rivera stood under the dim amber lights of the Nexus Council chamber. The space had been repurposed from a mining operations hub, hollow and circular, its walls patched with salvaged metal and display panels that blinked with soft error codes. The council sat in a broken crescent. 6 members. 3 human. 3 alien. None smiled. A woman in a heavy coat with Federation rank pins was the first to speak. Kaelen Meyer. Missing since reactor blackout 17A. Thought dead. Now claiming possession of internal Arcandine files. Kaelen nodded once. The files are real. Surveillance data. Genetic experiments. And something else. He turned to Rivera. They made her. And they're still trying to take her back. One of the alien counselors, a rust-colored Saurian with a split jaw, hissed softly. Created assets are not refugees. This one could be dangerous. I'm not a weapon, Rivera said, voice low. But I was made in a cage. And I escaped. The crystalline counselor from before leaned forward. We scanned you. Your DNA is hybridized with pre-Federation Vulpine lineages. Traits thought lost after the xenophage purge. They weren't lost, Rivera said. They were stolen. The chamber fell into a tense silence. Kaelen tapped his tablet, projecting the first set of files into the air, rotating images, grainy logs, test names like genetic drift tolerance, specimen 17 and cognitive loop conditioning failed. Then the footage. Rivera in her glass cell. Sedated. Hooked to machines. Screaming silently through restraints. The council watched in grim silence. The Federation woman spoke again. You say Arcandine deployed a null-class hybrid after you? Yes, Kaelen said. It mimicked Salvek's voice. Used a cortical echo. It was built from part of her genetic template. Which means, Rivera added, I'm the key to ending whatever they're planning next. The Saurian muttered. Or the fuse. The oldest human among them, his eyes clouded with implants, spoke for the first time. We've been waiting for a break like this. A survivor. A file set. Something concrete. He nodded slowly. If what you carry is authentic, the Federation won't ignore it. The council leaned back into hushed conversation, lines of translation scrolling over their wrists, data syncing, thoughts dissected in silence. Finally, the woman in the coat turned back. We can help you reach the capital. But it will be dangerous. Salvek won't stop, Kaelen said. No, Rivera added. He'll burn the stars to bring me back. The woman nodded. Then we won't let him. She stood. You have 1 week. Get ready. We're assembling a team. Ex-Arcandine employees. Test survivors. A tactical pilot. We move quietly. And if we're intercepted? Kaelen asked. The old man's lips twitched in the faintest smile. Then we finally give Arcandine a reason to fear the things they built. The temporary quarters assigned to Kaelen and Rivera were modest, just a refitted engineer's nest with soundproofed walls, recycled linens, and a flickering desk light that buzzed like a tired insect. But compared to cold tiles and containment cylinders, it felt like sanctuary. Rivera sat on the edge of the bed, her tail swaying slowly behind her. She was silent, hands clasped, her thoughts miles away. Kaelen closed the door behind them. You've barely said a word since the council. They said I might be the last. You already knew that. Knowing it and hearing it spoken aloud are different. Kaelen walked over and knelt in front of her. You're not a relic. You're not a mistake. You're proof that they couldn't erase everything. She looked down at him, golden eyes catching the pale light. They took so much. My language. My sky. Even my name. Rivera wasn't what I was born to. It was what Selvek called me. Retrieve Vector 17, Arvir. Kaelen's chest tightened. They named you after a tag. She nodded. And I let them, until now. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Not forced. Just full of weight. You can rename yourself, Kaelen said. You don't have to carry what they gave you. Her ears tilted forward slightly. No. I'll keep it. But I'll let it burn into something new. Not a designation. A scar. A thread. One that leads back to me. He rested his hands on her knees. Then I'll follow that thread wherever it leads. Her breathing caught for a moment, and her voice came softer than before. Why are you like this? Like what? Kind. Brave. Reckless. You didn't even know me, and you chose to open the door. Kaelen smiled faintly. Maybe I was waiting for the right person to walk through. She leaned forward, her forehead resting against his. You didn't just free me, Kaelen. You made me real again. They stayed like that for a long moment, connected still, breathing the same air in the quiet glow of the lamp. Then Rivera stood. We leave in a week, she said. Teach me what I need to know. About your ships. Your stations. Your people. I want to be ready. Kaelen grinned. All right. But fair warning, humans overcomplicate everything. She gave a soft chuckle, the sound low and warm. So do Vulpinari. Or we used to. Kaelen tilted his head. Is that your real species name? She nodded. It was. Long ago. Then it still is. Outside their quarters, Nexus Station pulsed with preparation. The stars beyond its hull trembled with tension. But inside, two survivors wove their first real thread of future. Together. The next day, Kaelen and Rivera were led to Docking Bay 3, converted into a staging arena for what Nexus called delicate extractions. Beneath overhead lamps buzzing with unstable power, 6 figures waited. The woman in charge, the same Federation-coded veteran from the Council, stepped forward. You'll need more than hope and one shuttle to get to the capital, she said. So we're giving you a crew. Kaelen folded his arms. Who are they? The woman began pointing one by one. First Vec. Ex-tactical pilot. Flew smuggling routes across the Soran wastes. Lost his leg in a reclaimer ambush, got a better one instead. Vec, a tall, lanky human with cybernetic legs and a crooked grin, nodded toward Kaelen. Don't worry, I only crash on weekends. Second, Dr. Urin. Former Arcandine researcher. Blew the whistle on illegal neural imprinting. They tried to erase him. Failed. Urin was gaunt and quiet, his arms sleeved in tattoos that covered old surgical scars. His eyes held none of the nervous fidgeting Kaelen expected, only focus. Third, Juno. The woman continued. Engineer/demolitionist. Likes explosives more than people. Juno, a squat, barrel-chested woman with red-tinted goggles, waved casually while chewing something that smelled like fuel gel. I blow stuff up. Sometimes by request. Kaelen nodded slowly. Promising start. And finally, the commander said, voice lowering slightly. Ravik. A shadow stepped forward. He wasn't human. Tall. Horned. Skin like volcanic rock. Eyes a dull, glowing gold. He wore no armor, only a worn flight harness and a necklace of glass shards. Ravik survived the Null Project, the woman said. He didn't escape with documents. He escaped with teeth. Ravik stared at Rivera without blinking. You, he said in a low rumble. You're what they modeled us after. I remember your face on every wall. In every corridor. Rivera met his stare without flinching. And you survived? Barely, Ravik said. They called me a broken prototype. Then we're both proof they failed. A flicker of recognition passed between them. Kaelen turned to the commander. You put together a team of people Arkandine already tried to erase. She smirked. People with nothing left to lose make the best allies. Rivera looked down the line, her ears twitching with the gravity of what she saw. When do we leave? The woman's tone turned hard. 3 days. You'll be briefed, armed, disguised, and loaded into a vessel disguised as a failed cargo sail. The Federation won't protect you until you're across the Salas border. Until then, Vec added, we'll be flying as ghosts. Kaelen looked at Rivera, then at their new team. Then let's haunt the bastards who tried to erase us. 3 days before launch. Nexus Station hummed with concealed tension, every bulkhead reinforced, every data relay sealed from the outside world. And within its engineering wing, Kaelen and Rivera stood amid a forest of holographic displays and unfinished armor plating. Juno handed Kaelen a torso module. Try this on. It'll scramble your biosignature and fake your stress hormone pattern. Federation design pre-purge tech. Kaelen strapped it on, wincing. Feels like I'm hugging a refrigerator. Good, Juno said, tossing him a pair of thermal damp boots. Comfort is a luxury spies can't afford. Rivera, meanwhile, was being scanned by Dr. Urin. She stood motionless as light patterns rippled over her fur and skin, mapping her musculature, vital readings, and neuroresponse rate. She's adapting faster than expected, Urin murmured. Core temperature steady. Neural oscillation stabilized. No sign of residual trauma flare. I feel calm, Rivera said. Which is unsettling. Kaelen looked over. Why? I've never walked into danger without knowing I'd die. She paused, eyes softening. Now there's a possibility of something after. Urin stepped back, tapping data into his tablet. Your biochemistry's unique. Your genome's not just engineered, it's intelligent. Self-correcting in a way even Arkandine didn't expect. So what does that mean? Kaelen asked. It means she's the first of her kind to ever be more than what she was built for, Urin replied. They didn't make a weapon. They accidentally made a future. Rivera blinked, stunned. Kaelen approached, placing a hand gently over her chest. Whatever you were meant to be, you're more now. And no one gets to define that but you. She stepped closer, her forehead brushing against his. If we make it through this, she whispered, I want to learn what else I can be. Kaelen smiled. Then we'll find out. Together. They stayed that way until the alert chirped, meeting call. Suit up, Juno barked. Time for briefing. Rivera grabbed her rebreather collar and clipped it behind her ears. One more thing. What? She turned to Kaelen, eyes glowing. If I don't make it, promise me you'll keep running. Get the evidence through. Kaelen frowned. Don't say that. Promise. He gritted his teeth. Fine. But I'm not leaving you behind. Not again. She smiled. I wouldn't let you. And with that, they stepped into the war room, two fugitives preparing to challenge a galaxy with nothing but truth, fire, and each other. The launch vessel was named Shrike, though the faded letters on its hull were half melted from old plasma scoring. It looked like junk, a cracked freighter chassis patched with mismatched armor, false serial numbers, and enough external rust to suggest it would barely survive Atmo re-entry. Perfect. Vex stood by the landing ramp, tapping his cybernetic fingers on a control pad. Shrike's got the bones of a courier but the stomach of a saboteur. Reinforced vent plating, hidden thrusters, Blackfield's signature cloak. Kaelen raised an eyebrow. Weapons? Vex's crooked grin widened. Let's just say if someone sneezes at us wrong, we can rip out their warp coil with a drone pod. Rivera ran her hand along the hull. She's ugly. She's family, Vec replied proudly. The team boarded one by one. Juno hauled crates of explosives into the lower hold, muttering to herself about shockwave ratios. Ravik settled into a wide combat couch near the rear turret, resting one massive hand on his knee like a sleeping predator. Dr. Urin claimed a narrow alcove for his mobile medkit and chemical sampler, already analyzing nutrient ratios for the voyage. Kaelen and Rivera took the forward cabin, just behind the cockpit. Inside, the ship smelled of iron and old oil. Wires curled like vines from the ceiling. Duct tape held together more systems than Kaelen liked to admit. But it would fly. The commander appeared one final time on the wall screen, her coat collar turned up. "You've got one shot," she said. "If you reach Federation space, our sources will intercept you and extract the files. But Arcandine has eyes on every trade route. They'll be waiting." "We're not flying a trade route," Beck replied, his fingers dancing over the NAV interface. "We're skipping straight through the debris shadow of the Helix comet. Nobody sane goes near that field." "Which makes it perfect," Rivera said. Kaelen stepped up beside her. "Let them chase. We've already outrun death once." The commander nodded once. "Shrike, you are cleared for dark launch. Godspeed." The signal cut. Engines roared. The hangar ceiling split open as Shrike lifted into the blackness. No beacon, no transponder. Just ghosts on the wind. Rivera stood behind the cockpit seat, her fingers gripping the rail. "Do you feel it?" she asked Kaelen. He looked up. "What?" "The air. The pull. The tension in the stars." Her tail twitched. "We've left the edge of safety. From here on out, it's only what we carry." Kaelen took her hand. "Then we carry each other." And as the Shrike vanished into the storm trail of Helix's debris field, the hunt began in earnest. The Helix comet's debris field wasn't a path, it was a minefield. Chunks of shattered moons, iron meteor fragments, old satellites, and drifting hulls of ships lost to history tumbled through the void at speeds that could shred a hull in seconds. But it wasn't just the danger of impact that made the route suicidal. It was the radiation storms that rode the comet's wake, pulse bursts of magnetized static that scrambled sensors and cooked unshielded NAV systems. Which was exactly why Vec chose it. "Arcandine can't track us through this," he said as the Shrike plunged into the storm. "And their reclaimers won't follow. Too many variables, too much chaos." Kaelen braced against the cockpit wall as a sonic thrum rocked the vessel. "Our shields won't hold if we take a direct hit." "Then we won't get hit," Vec said through gritted teeth. "Unless you want to take the wheel." Kaelen glanced back. "Nope." Rivera was standing in the corridor outside the cockpit, her arms crossed, staring out through the side viewport. The comet's path painted streaks of blue and gold against the dark, fragments glowing like angry stars. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's a grave," Ravik replied from beside her, seated like a statue of obsidian. "Everything in this field once belonged to someone who thought they could outrun fate. Then let's be the ones who prove it wrong," she said. Another shudder rocked the ship, this time, not from the debris. "Proximity alert!" Juno shouted from engineering. "There's something riding the storm." "Gaining!" Kaelen rushed to the nearest console and pulled up rear sensors. Through the static and radiation interference, a single shape flickered into clarity, long, jagged, like a blade etched into the stars. "Arcandine Hunter-class interceptor," he muttered. "They found us." "Impossible," Beck barked. "Nothing short of a god can navigate this field with a long-range tracker." Kaelen's stomach twisted. "Unless it's not a tracker." Rivera's eyes widened. "They sent the null hybrid." Suddenly, Ravik stood, growling low. "It's here for her." Juno's voice crackled in. "You want me to prep the rear cannons?" "No," Beck said, his face hard. "That ship will dodge everything unless we time it with the storm itself." Kaelen turned to Rivera. "You said you could sense its presence." "I can feel it," she said quietly. "It's locking onto me. Like gravity." He grabbed her shoulders. "Then we use that. We bait it. You want me to stand in the open?" "I want it to come close enough to be stupid." Vec pulled them both toward the lower bay hatch. "We vent the outer corridor, Fake an escape pod ejection, and hit the null with full rear boosters when it shifts to intercept. Ravik joined them, his massive hands flexing. If that fails, I'll buy you time. Kaelen met his eyes. You'll die. Ravik bared his teeth. Then I'll die free. Not in a cage. Rivera stepped into the chamber first, her silhouette framed by the raging comma light outside the viewport. It's coming, she whispered. I can feel it in my bones. Kaelen kissed her quickly, fiercely. Then let's give it something to remember. The null hybrid breached the storm behind them like a predator emerging from the edge of firelight, sleek, silent, unstoppable. No running lights. No comms. Just that cold silver mask and the energy signature of something barely alive. Inside the Shrike, Kaelen stood beside Rivera in the rear pressurized corridor. The decompression sequence blinked red, the emergency airlock nearly primed. Ravik loomed behind them, silent as stone. I'll draw it in close, Rivera said. You vent me just as it gets a lock. Kaelen's jaw tightened. You're not a target. She looked up at him, glowing eyes fierce. No. I'm the flame. Then she stepped into the decompression chamber. Kaelen locked eyes with Ravik, who gave a grim nod and stepped into position by the release valve. Rivera placed a hand on the cold window of the hatch, staring into the glittering chaos beyond. She felt it before the sensors picked it up: pressure, hunger, recognition. The null was here. Outside the hull, it unfolded from a cloaked position, gliding with inhuman grace along the curvature of the ship. A black spear drifting through chaos. I can feel its thoughts, Rivera said. But they're not thoughts. Just impulses. Rage. Control. Order. 10 seconds to intercept. Kaelen called from the console. The ship shuddered violently. Debris or its claws, it didn't matter. Rivera exhaled once, and whispered through the internal mic. Now. Ravik yanked the valve. The chamber decompressed with a howling scream, and Rivera was ripped into the void like a flame torn from its wick. But she moved. Spinning, controlled, every muscle in her body braced for zero-grav combat. The null turned instantly. It lunged. And in that moment, Kaelen slammed full rear thrust into the stabilizers, blasting a wash of reactor-charged plasma into the path of the hybrid. Rivera twisted away, catching the airlock handhold in a single motion, as the null took the full hit. The creature screamed, static, biological, glass-shattering rage. It didn't die. But it faltered. And Ravik was waiting. The juggernaut launched himself through the decompressed corridor with a bellow, driving both fists into the hybrid's damaged side. The two of them tumbled into the void, locked in a brutal, silent war. Kaelen's voice cracked through the comms. Get back in the ship! Rivera pulled herself into the chamber just before the seal slammed shut, her lungs burning. Kaelen yanked her into his arms, his body trembling. He stayed behind, she gasped. Ravik, he bought us this. Kaelen looked through the rear viewport. Out there, in the storm, the null drifted, wounded but not finished. But Ravik's body glowed like a dying ember as he detonated the backup reactor module he'd silently strapped to his back. The blast bloomed like a miniature sun. And then there was nothing. Silence. Just the stars again. The Shrike drifted on, damaged but intact, guided now by Vec's steady hands and the gravimetric pull of approaching Federation space. Kaelen cradled Rivera in the quiet. Her skin was hot with residual stress, but her heartbeat was strong. We're almost there, he whispered. We're going to make it. Her voice was faint, but sure. Then Ravik's sacrifice meant something. A light blinked on Kaelen's terminal, Federation beacon signal. They had crossed the border. A voice broke through the static. Unidentified vessel, you've entered protected space. Transmit credentials. Kaelen keyed the data dump. This is whistleblower evidence on Arcandine Biotech. Attached Subject 17 testimony, internal experiments, genetic files. Another pause. Transmission received. Stand by for escort. You're safe now. He looked down at Rivera. She was staring out the viewport, her lips parted. "What is it?" he asked. Her eyes were shimmering. "I see them," she said. "The stars." For the first time. Kaelen smiled, his throat thick. And together they watched as the black behind them grew small, and the light ahead, impossibly bright.